All right, I guess we are recording now. So this is Postman demo, and as I said, you can download Postman at getpostman.com, and then follow instructions on this page to set it up for public API testing. So this is the Postman I have set up so far, and in here I have collection of API requests that we make to test public API. Initially, I had it broken down into accounts calls, engage calls, and publish calls. But then later we had the separate calls testing metadata, version, and app check. So those are broken down into a separate collection of tests. Also, I do have a separate collection for API HTTP response codes and errors. Broken down into separate collections, so it's easier to test it separately when needed. So yeah, pretty much the collection setup is very easy to do, and we can do it for anything. Let's say we'll do it for next one for paid media, so we'll just probably follow about the same structure I did for accounts, engage, and publish. So we'll do paid media, and then you provide brief description. And then you create. So it creates a separate collection that you can edit. You can add subfolders, which at this point I don't recommend because you cannot share them really. And it's better to create a separate collection so it can be easily shareable as a link. You can upload and get link, and then everyone can actually pull that collection down. But in certain cases, you may have to create a folder. So when you come to it, you can do it. Also, you can duplicate a collection of calls. You can download it locally or delete it. So this is a new Postman UI. Some of you guys have old Postman UI, but they have updated the UI, so it looks a little bit different, but the functionality is still here. There is something new, like you can expand it down like this, or you can expand it like this. From here, you can run your collection of tests. For example, I have these tests for accounts, and I can just run all of them at once. So it opens a separate window, and I still see that I can run any of them. At this point, I'm choosing to run accounts requests. I select environment. I'll talk a little bit about environment a little bit later. But for now, you can select environment you want to run it against. You select number of iterations you want to run it for. So in this case, 1. It makes sense sometimes when you do rate limiting, you need to run 900 calls to hit rate limits. So it makes sense to have it here. You can also set up delays. I have no idea why we need to set up delays between calls, but in some cases it may make sense. And you can attach the data file also. I assume data file would include number of requests similar to this, which I need to investigate what can be there in that data file. I haven't tried it yet. But anyway, I have requests, I have test environment, I can start running it. And then it pretty much runs all of them. In this case, it fails, and I can see for one unauthorized because public API requires us to send authorization token in headers. So let me close this and show you how we generate. You can generate that within the Postman. So let's say I have an account call, which calls to accounts gatekeeper URL, and this is endpoint accounts. And here I can set up different environments in Postman. So far I have set up stage and sandbox, and then sandbox for engage, and then stage and then production. So when you set up environment, you give it a variable name for global components like gatekeeper URL for accounts. The name of the variable is the same across all the test environments, but the value is different. So when I'm in SRM API staging, the value for accounts gatekeeper URL is going to be staging cloud vitro.com admin v1. Right? When I change it to, let's say, sandbox, that value, the name stays the same, accounts gatekeeper, but the value changes from staging to sandbox. And pretty much I don't have to change anything in the call to test it against sandbox or quickly switch it to staging. I can run the same call, it will hit different URL, and the test will be run against staging. So to do that, I need to do OAuth 2.0, and I need to append authorization token to a header. So when I do that, I click Get Access Token, and then we need to provide these variables for authorization URL, access token URL, client ID, client secret, and scope. All of these values can be picked up from Gatekeeper within specified test environment. Let's say if I'm testing against staging, I need to create app in Gatekeeper staging, get all of these values. In my case, this is the URL I'm hitting to authorize, and this is the URL I'm hitting to get token, and this is the app ID and secret of that newly created application within the Gatekeeper. And this is the scope. There is a tab scope in Gatekeeper, and there are 3 scopes we identified and created for, we created for publish, engage, and accounts. So I provide all those values in here to generate access token. And again, depending on the environment you select, the URLs we hit in here are going to be different. So if I select production instead of staging URL, it will be hitting production URL. So I'm going to be generating access token against production environment. So I click Get Access Token. It generates me access token, and I give it any random name. So let's say I test in staging, stage token. I click save, and now it's saved right here under the authorization. So when I click it, I get it inserted into header. So when I expand headers that I send, I can see this authorization token inserted right here. So what I usually do, the token unfortunately expires in 2 hours. So what you need to do when you test, you need to copy this and go to Manage Environments, select environment you test with, and the first variable you have, OAuth token, you just replace old value with new and save that. So now when I run all the calls, for accounts, they're going to be passing. And again, I choose what collection to run, I choose what environment to run, and I run. And they all pass. So I can see stats, and I can see that what today we had, this was the latest run, was it? Okay, so basically I can examine the results and try to see what failed. So in this case, it's supposed to get status code 200 OK, but for some reason got 404, so it couldn't find probably the resource ID. So to debug it, what you usually do, you just go back to, you close this, go back to Postman and find that request, and in that case, get resources, resource ID, and you try to run it. and it fails with 404. So I need to investigate if this is the resource ID that's incorrect on staging, or something else is going on. Sometimes it can be that you have incorrect resource ID. Sometimes it can be that you just you hit the bug. So let's see if I do LinkedIn resource ID and send it. Yeah, in this case, it found the LinkedIn resource. So probably the Instagram resource ID is just incorrect. What else? All right, setting up tests. So at least I have at least one test for each call that I have in Postman, and that test pretty much verifies the status code of the request. In this case, I have the check for the status code 200. Okay, so to make this call successful, it needs to return 200, and when I run it, I can check some information here in headers if you need to, but there is a separate tab for tests, and I can see that status code is 200. Okay, so the test has passed. As for headers, you can see some information like content type, and in our case, it should be something like this. We had separate stories for that to test exactly that content type is JSON type collection or type singular in some cases. And also what you need to pay attention to, you can see the status here, and you need to pay attention to rate limit. So as I ran some of the calls, you see they've been subtracted from the total 90, and rate limit resets every 15 minutes for public API. I have more tests to show for engage. So for example, messages, let's see if I have, right, so yeah. So pretty much there are a bunch of snippets right here that I can use to, wait, can't I scroll down? Huh? So yeah, there are a bunch of snippets that I can use to verify certain data in the response. In this case, I'm verifying to status code. In this case, I'm using a little snippet to verify some of the response text. For example, limit should equal to 30, and count should be equal to 30 also. And then there should be this. Has more, and it should be equal to true in this particular response. So when I run it, I can see that all 4 tests has passed. So status code is 200, okay, default limit 30, default count 30, has more, link is true. And when I go to body to examine this, I can see exactly that. Has more is true, limit 30, and count 30. Those are default. And then, of course, at this point, I have to visually, manually verify the data, that the data returned is what we expect. If I want to, this is done by multiple calls, so if I want to verify that only type post returned, I created a call here that actually tests that. For example, this call. So this call has message filter posts. So when I hit send, it should return me all the posts with type posts. So I can do a quick search in Postman just to make sure that I don't have any mentions or DMs in that call. Right here, I can just search for mentions and hit enter, and there is nothing, right? I can search for direct messages and nothing, and posts, and I do have something for posts, just what? Post. So post. So yeah, when I hit post, it highlights you type post. So pretty much that's how I'm doing manual verification. Also, it's good to save. There's a good function here to save response. So I can save it as a text file. And when I save it, it appends to the call itself. So anything I select, for example, I want to see this. So I can save response in any point of time. So this was the first iteration, and it looked like this. So when I click it, I can see what was the response at that time. Later, when we change something, I saved second response because it's different now from what it was before. And it's good to have history, because when you test, you always can come back and see how it was previously. And that's useful for many cases, actually, because sometimes devs say, oh, it was like that always. You're like, no, it wasn't like that always. And you can compare and see what was different. So to have some history is always good. Besides that, there are smaller features, like you can see response in raw, you can do preview, you can copy, and you can append. So for example, for publish, when you do post, there is a way to actually send some data. So in this case, I'm sending raw data that has all the post details that I'm sending, like type of the post, report name, message, action, I can publish, schedule, and resources where I want to publish, to Facebook page, a Twitter page, and so on. That's all we do so far, but there are more options. If we need to, we can send text, JavaScript, XML, HTML, whatever. At this point, we send in JSON, so all the rest is not important. We also can manage environments, so we can multiply environments and create new ones when needed. So either by duplicating or just creating a new environment. And within that environment, you pretty much, I'm trying to maintain the same structure of the environment and have the same variables, so they can be shared across the environments, and only values are different. So for example, bundle ID that I'm using in URLs, right here, bundle ID, it's always bundle ID, but depending on the environment you selected, it's going to be a different value. So for staging, it's this ID. For production, it's going to be a different one. So far, we have like accounts, gatekeeper URL, engage gatekeeper, publish gatekeeper, bundle ID, sub-bundle ID. I'm using message IDs for engage testing, reply ID for engage, message ID own, because we have authorized channels and we have like public channels. So there is a little bit different approach to testing of different message types. That's why I have so many here: message ID own, message ID delete, message ID hide, reply ID delete, Facebook own resource ID. Then I have different IDs, resource IDs that I'm using in Engage, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Sina Weibo, and so on. Then I have a bunch of different IDs for post IDs for publish testing, post ID to edit, post ID to delete, and so on and so on. And as we move along, like sometimes I'm adding new ones. Like for example, I just recently added Facebook and Twitter DM, direct message ID, to test direct messages separately. And when we move along, we're going to be adding new ones, new IDs and so on. So you just identify the name you want to use and then different values for different environments. And yeah, I guess that's it. You guys go ahead, ask questions.
Can you do a brand new, create a brand new test so I can see how that's done from the very beginning?
Brand new, yeah. So brand new tests. So let's see, account. So let's say I want to test that the count is not going to be. You see, that's the problem, because of some of the data can change, right? The count here is 20. When I add a count to staging, it's going to be 21. So setting up a static test that tests that it's always 20 doesn't make any sense, because if it changes, the test will fail. That's why I was trying to figure out like what's the best way to actually create tests for this. And if anyone tests public API, if you have any suggestions, thoughts, let's discuss them. Let's figure out how to test certain things in the response. But to create new tests, so to create a new request, you pretty much, let's see. So you pretty much create a new request. Let's say for paid media, you're gonna create paid media. Paid media gatekeeper URL or something like that, right? And then paid media endpoint there will be, and then you can save it and you save as, and then you choose what collection to add to, or you can create a new collection. In this case, I already created API paid media, so I select that. I type this is testing PM endpoint, and I add to collection. At that point, you see that the request is added to collection. You also can select what method to use. So either get, post, put, delete, or whatever else can be used. At this point, we're only using get, post, put, and delete across public API. And if I change it, let's say to post, and I can save again, it saves right here. It says post.
Where would you put in your body? Will you just type it in the key and the value there at the bottom?
You have a body of the message you need to send, right?
Yeah.
If you have a body, you select it right here. Either send it as a form data. I mean, this is something you need to know based on the requirements, what format to use to send data, right? For publish, we use raw, and then you will have some JSON that devs need to provide with like something like content, and then so on and so on, right? So you will have something like I have for publish, like that, right? So that's something you need to work with devs, because not necessarily you need to know how all of this is structured and what to use exactly. So, so yeah, that's what you have. You also have like you need to update if you duplicate. So sometimes it's easy to duplicate the endpoint, right? So if you have, let's say, you can duplicate and then you have a copy of it, and then you need to edit name. In this case, like instead of post, you do put, and instead of PM, you do PM test endpoint, right? You change the description, and then you save, and you have a completely new endpoint that you test. And here at top, you have a description of the endpoint, and then you have a URL, pretty much, that you can send. Or you also can set new tests. You click test tab, and then you need to have a test that tests response code, and you can copy that from any call we have in public API. And then if you want to play around with other snippets, like you click the snippet, and then you get something like this. Response time is less than 200 milliseconds. If you have a requirement to test performance for APIs, you can put this, and it will test it. If the response time is going to be more than 100 or 200 milliseconds, it will be highlighted as fail, so you know that performance is not that good for API. Yeah, I guess this is good also for benchmarking, and eventually we can sit down with devs and figure out what performance of the request we should have. Okay.
So Yuri.
Yeah.
The managed environment aspect of this, is that specific to your user, or is that?
So no, that's not specific to my user. It's not easy to, at this point we got licenses, so we have licenses enabled us to run tests. So without license, we only could run tests for 14 days as a trial, but now we can actually run a set of tests because we have licenses, right? So this is pretty much paid option to run all of them at once. So you have all your results within minutes, and you know if it's passed, you're pretty much okay. You can do API regression testing like this. If something fails, you can investigate it and so on. And well, again. So to manage environments and collections, Postman offers paid service pretty much. And you see there is an option team here. It seems like they charge monthly, about $50 monthly to maintain the code base. We still can to maintain it across the team. That's what I mean. You still can export and download all the collections and export and download all the environments. So for example, you can use mine, and then at least you can use my setup, and then you, as Bobby and Lacey doing, they pretty much have about the same structure as I do, but then when they download it, they can go and use their data. So instead of my account, they can use their own account, right? Instead of my subbundle, they use their own subbundle. Instead of my post ID, Bobby uses his own post ID. And he saves that, and he has his own test data. So to do that, pretty much, you need to go again. You go to this page. I send you a link, and I can send you again. It has the whole backup file that I created based on my Postman setup. So you can use that. You just pretty much you go through the steps. I think they are pretty accurate, up to 6 steps, and after that you'll have Postman setup. And if anything is not working as expected or unclear, you ping me. I'll always help you and explain how that works. At this point, we have. I believe if you use the whole backup file, it will download all the environment setup as well as collections, including all of these accounts, engage, publish, HTTP respond, and metadata. If you do one by one, let's say you have it and then you want new version, you can use the link, and then within the Postman there is import option. You do import, and then if you have files downloaded, you can. Oh, this is for upload files. So download from link, and then you paste the link, and then you import. And it will ask you to create a new copy of the collection, or I think overwrite the old one. So gotta be pretty careful with that, because we don't have any good source version control yet for our collections. So if anyone makes any changes to the collections, you guys need to share that. Like you can upload and get link, and then post a link on the page so other people can actually pull your new changes in, import them. I'm gonna talk to John about this service for the team, where we can have all the collections actually synced in kind of real time to one repo, and all updates, all new updates are there. Nobody should worry about all this version control stuff. What else? Yeah, and this is pretty much it. And I hit a bug within the Postman where I cannot share engage collection for some reason. I don't know if it's a data that I have there, but it doesn't work. I contacted Postman, so they said they acknowledged it's a bug and they preparing a fix for it. That's all.
You're
Yeah.
if I wanted to set up paid media only, I don't see any accounts or publish or any other APIs. How would I do that?
We can let's take it offline. Let's take it offline. So you pretty much create new collection. I send you invite. So you register for Postman. You download Postman. You just start by creating a collection.
Okay.
So there's a history tab. You switch to collections, and then you create a new collection. And I don't mind helping you just kind of to make it uniformed for all of the API collections that we have. I think it's useful to have about the same structure for all the calls and all the collections and tests. So eventually, when we pull all of them together, we'll have a nice set of API collections.
Yeah. So I see here, you see the post drop down here for the type of call you're making. Here on the put /PM, it's like a tab. It says put /PM/test here. So the post drop down with the paid media like URL here, your paid media _GK in brackets and stuff like that /PM. How is that URL created?
So this drop down, this is like a request.
The stuff after.
Yeah, right. So after that is pretty much you create a variable. You can call it as you want. I generally call it. You see, for accounts, gatekeeper, engage gatekeeper, and publish gatekeeper, I call it by product name _JK, right? And then you need to get the exact URL to the gatekeeper. So for example, if I'm using accounts, let me show you. If I'm using accounts right here, accounts, right, gatekeeper. Let's do this example. Accounts gatekeeper. So this is pretty much equivalent to this. So this is pretty much what I'm hitting. This is the base URL, and this is the endpoint I'm hitting, accounts, right? In this case, for example, endpoint is accounts bundles, but base URL is, again, what I told you it is, like this one. So you see, the problem is if you have the URL here, right? You need, let's say you need it, you need to run it on staging. So you run it on staging. And then let's say you need to compare it or run it on production or run it on the sandbox. So you will need to actually go and change the URL. And if it's for production, you'll have to do this, for example, right? Something like that. And every time you run it against different environments, you will have to change the URL. And if URL looks complicated like this, in Engage, for instance, let's see. So here I have Engage gatekeeper URL. So I'll have to, if I switch to sandbox or production or staging, I'll have to change the URL itself. Then I will have to switch bundle ID because bundle ID in every environment is different. Then I will have to find and switch resource ID. And instead I'm using these ones and setting up different values for these variables in the environment itself. It's kind of, yeah, you need to use it a little bit to get a better feel of what it is and how it's used, honestly. But I can help you with that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you just, so this value, for example, for message ID that I'm using, is going to be this message ID I grabbed from the staging environment Engage UI. And if I go to another environment, production, that value is going to be different. But the name, message ID, is still the same. And that's what I use in there, in the URL. For example, here, message ID, you see?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so yeah, for production, it's going to be this number, and for staging is going to be this number, right? So instead of changing that, I just have variable there.
Yeah. Yeah, Postman makes it definitely easier.
Also, you can do whatever you want with the call, right? You can change it and you can send it, and it doesn't update the collection at this point. It only when it makes sense for you to change it. Let's say you we used to have bundle ID like this, right, with underscores, and then the compliance was to change it to bundle ID like that, camel case. So when we had it like this, I just simply had to modify it here, like bundle ID, and then click save, and it actually saved here in the collection. That's it. But if you want to do something like that and send, you can do it. So you can modify data as many times as you want and send it as many times as you want within your testing. But when you got the exact call you want to make and save, you just save it.
Okay. And it automatically saves to the collection.
Yeah, it saves to the collection, and then you can browse your collection right here, and you can see all the calls either in this format or in this one. And then I tried to structure calls so it make kind of sense. So I skipped the base URL and started with an endpoint. First of all, I have a method. I actually was thinking about getting rid of this method because it's just a description, right? So right here, so I can remove it. Oh. I can remove it from here, like that, and leave it only like that. So we already have get here, and then I know this is get, and then messages compliance. But I initially set it up like this, so it's too much work now to actually change it back. So unless it's absolutely needed, I'll probably keep it like this for now.
Okay.
So do we need to set up a new environments for staging and production for these other stuff that's not public API, or is the production and staging environments that you have in there, can we use those for paid media calls or for Server 3.0 calls?
I think so. Yeah, if they are the same, but you see, you're probably using a little bit different environment, right?
Right.
You're probably using SRM UI.staging for Surma v3, right?
Right. Well, it's going to eventually, by beginning of July, be just accounts.staging, the normal staging environment.
Okay.
So that's what I want to set it up for, is for the normal staging environment, so that I could make these calls once we go to staging.
Right. Yeah, but before it happens, you probably had to test it, right? So when you have to test it, you will need to create a new environment. So, for example, let's say if you think that data that you're gonna use is similar to what we set up here, so like you will still be using probably authorization token or not. I'm not sure for Surma v3. Do you need to use an auth token?
Yeah.
Okay, so you probably need this. You probably need to, if you're gonna do authorization, you probably need all of this: authorize, token, app ID, app secret, and scope. Then you will probably need your URL. So it makes sense. It makes sense in some cases to copy, but honestly, if you don't really need, for Surma v3, you probably don't really need all this crap from engage and publish. So it just makes sense to add a new account, and you can call that account srm-ui.staging. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you create your own. You can copy from another, like auth ID token, right? And then
if I duplicate one, I can just delete.
You can do that. Yes, you can pretty much duplicate this one, and this is a copy, and then you open it and you modify it. Let's say this is UI staging, right? So it has a little bit different name, so you can distinguish between them. And then you can pretty much go ahead and delete all the stuff that you don't need, and just leave what you need. And then you just need to update. Let's say it's going to be gatekeeper UI.staging, So you will need to update that value so it hits the correct gatekeeper, what you need, what you need to hit. And then base accounts gatekeeper, for example, it's not going to be SRM API, it's going to be SRM UI stage, right? So those values you will need to update for that new environment, and then you save it. And here you have it. So now when you need to run the call for Surma v3 collection that you will have here, let's say this is Surma v3, you just select that environment, UI staging. You go and do authorization if required. In some cases, authorization needs to be, in public API case, we need to append it to header. In some cases, you maybe need to append it to URL right here. So if you do that, for example, it will append access token right here in the URL. But I'm not sure, it's like, it depends on your implementation. And then again, you generate token, either paste it in the headers or paste it in the URL. By the way, there is a URL params field here that you can expand, and you can see all parameters that are appended to the URL. So for example, if I select engage, something a little bit more complicated, I have a bunch of parameters. I have bundle ID appended to URL, I have resource ID, and I have message filter here. Parameters. So when you start appending parameters in the API calls, you usually use question mark after endpoint. So this is the endpoint, and as soon as it ends and you start appending parameters, you need question mark, and then you append parameters separated by ampersand. Or you can do it, if you don't want to mess up with the URL, you can expand this URL params portion and just add new and value 1, 2, 3 or whatever. And then it automatically appends it right here. And you can drag it if you need it appended first. You drag it first. It gets in the first position right here, and then if you need to delete it, you just delete it. All right, I guess this is all. So yeah, Tony, if you have, let me stop recording here. If you have time today, we can spend some time, 10-15 minutes, just to start setting up paid media.